You're listening to The Upland Rookie, a podcast presented by Upland Brits. And a huge thanks to our title sponsor, B Pro Kennels. Handcrafted and American-made, built here in the USA, B Pro Kennels is bringing you a premium-built dog box unlike anything you've seen before. Built from a full tube frame and aluminum powder-coated shell. Built-in lockable storage, and oh, how about those dog collars? Did you forget to charge them? Well, no worries. B Pro has you covered with their built-in solar panel and battery bank to take care of all your charging needs while out on the road chasing birds this fall. This is a full-on custom setup that won't disappoint. Check them out at bprokennels.com. Use promo code ROOKIE10 to save 10% off your order with B Pro Kennels. Also a special thanks to our sponsors over at Final Rise and Trinity Bretons. All good things start with a solid foundation. At Final Rise, all three of their premium Upland vests are built around the foundational waist belt to provide you with all-day comfort and endless customization. With a secure waist belt, this is the vest that you can load down with birds and walk all day. Final Rise is creating high-functioning Upland gear that delivers comfort, balance, and a lifetime of memories. Check them out at finalrise.com. Also check out their brand new gun case, takedown case, the long gun case, and also grab yourself a pair of their premium Upland gloves. Trinity Bretons is home of the Épingle Breton, also known as the French Brittany. All Trinity Breton dogs are from champion bloodlines that are field tested and family approved. For over 33 years, Trinity Bretons has worked to offer you the best bred Épingle Breton in the country for the field trialer and foot hunter alike. Trinity Bretons offers puppies, the Trinity Upland Academy with George Hickox, started dogs, stud services, and a whole lot more. Reach out to Jeff or Josh from Trinity Bretons and check them out at trinitybretons.com. Hey, what's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Upland Rookie Podcast. I am your host, Will Larson, and it is so good to be back with you guys again. This is episode 54, and we are chatting with Ronnie and Susanne Smith of Smith Kennels. Now, if you think you recognize the name, well, I'm sure there's a lot of Smiths out there, but in the world of bird dogs and upland hunting, you may have heard of the Smith method. And yes, we are talking with Ronnie and Susanne of the Smith family. So Delmar Smith, Rick Smith, Ronnie Smith. Don't ask me the relationship between everyone because I'm probably going to get it wrong. They are all connected. They're all related. They're a one big family. And so I think there's an uncle and a brother. And Delmar was Rick's uncle maybe? I'm not sure. But anyways, Ronnie and Susanne, they are running their own kennel, Smith Kennels in Oklahoma. And we get to chat with them and learn a whole lot more about training. We answer a bunch of listeners' questions. So questions that you all have written in. Some of the Patreon community wrote in some specific questions for the Smiths, and so we get into those and unpack more about training and development of bird dogs. You guys know I love talking bird dog development, especially puppies. We get into that quite a bit in this episode and a whole lot more. Talk about the Smith family history, what Ronnie and Susanne are up to and some of the training that they're doing. So I think it's going to be a really good one. I had a ton of fun chatting with them. We recorded this one a while back and had a couple signal issues with our internet feed. So a couple parts in it get a little gargly, I would say. And so apologize for maybe not the absolute best quality, but working on doing some updates and upgrades to my recording system. So hopefully that won't happen in the future. And the one thing I also wanted to mention regarding the Smith method. Now, I have had the most experience with the Smith method, and it's been the one that has made sense for me, for the trainer, for the handler of my dogs that I have, my personal dogs. It's been the first one that maybe I had that aha moment that I saw the pieces of the puzzle. I saw all the ideas. I asked questions. I did research on other methods. It's the first one that made sense for me, Will Larson. And that is not to say it's going to be the one that makes sense to Joe down the street or whoever it might be. There are so many good trainers out there, good training plans and methods, and people who are doing this professionally, amateurs, whoever it is, that have their own skill set and method of training a dog. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as you've heard the saying go. And so I bring this up to say there's not a one size fits all. Every person's dog is going to be different. Every dog that a person has is going to be different. And the handler, we're all wired so uniquely. And so for me, this method has made so much sense to me. I've gotten to see the pieces of the puzzle, see the importance of why you do step 1, 2, 3, 4, and seeing the results now from that. And so again, I dove in for the last several years. I looked at Hickok's method and some other ones out there. And again, it clicked. And for you listening, you might be on the Hickok's method, or you might be following Mo Lindley, or you might be following a hybrid plan. There's so many ones out there. Perfection Kennels. I've heard some great things about Perfection Kennels. Standing Stone Kennels, obviously. They do some great stuff on YouTube. And, everyone's going to be different and with your own dog. And so I encourage you as a listener, when you hear this conversation here with the Smiths, again, you may learn something that you didn't think of before. I encourage us to listen with an open mind, because you may have your thing. You may have, hey, this is my plan. But never stop doing your research. Never stop learning. Never stop asking questions. I think that's a really good thing in life, just in general, is take your time and lean into things you don't understand. Lean into harder concepts that you might learn something from. And I'm going to do that myself. I mean, I might not always do the Smith method. I've seen great results on my own my 2 personal dogs I've used this with. But hey, who knows? Maybe the next dog I might try something different that I haven't tried yet. Again, I did some research in the beginning. Read some books, videos, asked questions to people I know and trust. And again, this was just the first one that has made sense to me. So it's going to be different for everyone. And so just keep that in mind as you are listening to this episode and all episodes in the future. I get to have the chance to interview some great guests who are professionals in this field and have been doing this a long time. I appreciate each and every one of them and respect their philosophies, because they've seen lots and lots of dogs. I've only seen a handful. I mean, in comparison to some pro trainers out there, I've seen a small fraction. And so do what makes sense to you. Do your own research and figure out what's going to be the best plan for you and your dog. And the last thing I'll say is again, I'm using air quotes. The method I'm using, it's not exactly the Smith method. It's I would say probably 85, maybe 90% the Smith method, and some of it's a little bit of a hybrid. Some of my mentors, a couple things of mine that I've seen that I did differently now between Win and Gage. And so, anyways, I'll leave it at that. I just thought it was worth mentioning here before we dive into this conversation. So last thing, just a couple quick announcements for the show. Patreon supporters, thank you. Thank you so much for stepping up this last month. We have an awesome giveaway happening over at patreon.com for all Patreon members. We're doing a giveaway each and every month for the next 3 months now. We announced the July winner, which was Colton S. He walked away. He chose the Final Rise vest from Final Rise, and so congrats, Colton. We still have 3 more opportunities to give away some awesome prizes, including the Cable Gangs tie-out system, a knife from Upland Knife Company, and a Gunner Fan Kit 2.0. And so make sure you sign up on Patreon. I will announce the next winner the 1st of September. So September 1st, I will announce the winner of the August giveaway. So one thing on Patreon I wanted to just mention and say thank you to. Again, I know there's some awesome giveaways. I'll be doing this one here for this next few months, and I'll do more in the future, of course. Just know that your support to the podcast through Patreon is helping the podcast directly. I want to give you an example of that. So I've currently been recording this last year and a half on a Blue Yeti microphone, which has been awesome. It's a great starter microphone for any podcaster, I think. But I was noticing with my crazy household, lots of kids, dogs, I mean, you name it, recording here in my garage, it's a dynamic microphone, and so if you know anything about mics, it picks up every freaking thing, everything. Every breath from me, noise from the kids inside through a wall and a closed door. It's that sensitive. And so again, for the most part, I've been able to mitigate that with some editing and volume controls and all that. But so I took money from Patreon this past month and upgraded my microphone. So got a condenser microphone, or a little bit better quality. So thank you. I just wanted to let you guys know where your money is going by supporting the podcast through Patreon. I was able to go directly back into the podcast, upgraded my microphone, did some other sound quality improvements here in my little garage corner. So hopefully you can hear that. I'm still working out and learning how to use this mic, but just wanted to say thank you for the support. And again, we got some sweet giveaways. The one giveaway I wanted to highlight, I'm going to highlight, so we have 3 left. We got the Cable Gangs, the Upland Knife Company, and the Gunner Fan Kit. Each of the next couple weeks, I'm going to highlight each of those items. So I'm going to highlight the Cable Gangs tie-out system. So that is a freaking awesome tie-out system. I picked this up about a year and a half ago, maybe close to 2 years now. And it's been phenomenal, guys. It is a product that is made here in the USA, Louisiana. Brennan Landry is cranking these out down in Louisiana. And if you want to talk about a badass bird dog guy, you're going to want to reach out to Brennan. He's got some great pointers, a couple Brittany's, I think, 1 or 2 Brittany's maybe. And just a great guy to work with. He's been phenomenal. Every time I reach out to him with a question or a comment, customer service speaks volume, guys. And I want to work with companies and be involved with companies that I just really love the people. And Brennan is hands down second to none with customer service, feedback, innovation. I mean, he is always cranking out custom tie-out systems, and I think his slogan is something like "Break dogs, not tie-outs." And these tie-outs, again, top-notch quality tie-out systems, and again, customizable. If you want a, 14-dog system, sure, go ahead and shoot him a message, and I'm sure he'd love to work with you guys. And so I currently have a 3-dog tie-out system with 2 ground stakes. So technically, I can turn that into a 5-dog system, and that's been really nice. If I got my dogs, a couple buddies' dogs, you have plenty of room for all them on the Cable Gang. So check him out, cablegangs.com. He's cranking out new products all the time. He just came out with a roading rig for if you rode a dog off an ATV. I might want to check one of those out as well for biking, kind of like a little bungee accessory. So I think he's being pretty cool, pretty innovative with some new products over at Cable Gang. So I will also do an episode, maybe with Brennan or maybe someone in the world who really knows kind of the importance of a tie-out system for a dog. I know Ron Bain did an episode a while back, I think with what's her name? Tana from True Grit Brits. And they did a whole conversation on the importance of a tie-out system and what a dog is learning from that. And it was fascinating stuff. So I'll definitely try to do one in the future. I can't, again, that's something I've seen firsthand. I had no idea what a tie-out system was, 5 years ago, or the importance of it. But as I've been in this more, it's been something that has been so valuable. The neck pressure and the neck cues that the dog will kind of teach themselves on that, if you will. There's some really cool stuff behind that. So stay tuned for that. That'll definitely come in the future. But check out Cable Gangs for all your tie-out system needs. All right, guys. Other than that, I think that's a wrap for this intro. Sorry, this was a little bit long. The only other thing I wanted to mention is if you are still considering a dog box, if you've ever considered a dog box, check out bprokennels.com. And we have a promo code for all listeners of the podcast. That is Rookie 10. So Rookie 10 is going to save you 10% off your order at B Pro Kennels. So Ben is cranking out some dog boxes over there. Patreon members, you guys get a little bit more, a little bit bigger of a discount for Patreon members only. So if you are seriously considering a dog box, head over to Patreon, and there'll be a larger promo code over there for Patreon members. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoy this episode. Again, sorry for the long intro, and hope everyone has a great week. So glad to have you guys on the podcast. Can you guys, two things first, tell us each a little bit who you are and put us on the map. Where are you talking to us from?
Well, we are sitting in the hills of northern Oklahoma right now. We moved over here north of Pawhuska, Oklahoma about 3 years ago and started our facility here. Originally, the family started training dogs in Big Cabin, which is about 90 miles east of here. That's the original location for all the dog training, the beginning of all the dog training. But we are located now just about 6 miles south of the Kansas line in Osage County.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. And so we're talking to Susanne and Ronnie Smith. And we are so glad you guys have taken the time to carve out your busy schedules and chat with me on the podcast here. So thank you guys. Can you guys tell us a little bit, again, if someone's not familiar with the Smith family, can you give us a little history, maybe a little background on the Smith family and all that?
Sure. So there are two dog trainers in the Smith family, and one is my father, Ronnie Smith Sr., and the other is my uncle Dilmer, who's 96 and still alive. And the Smith boys grew up in Big Cabin, Oklahoma. And at the time they were growing up, there were a lot of professional bird dog trainers in that area. The Indian territory of Oklahoma, once it opened up and we had statehood, there were a lot of it was wild and prolific with game. So there were a lot of pro trainers that came in because of the oil money around Towson, Bartlesville, Ponca City. And a lot of the trainers were there. So it's steeped in that kind of tradition. So my uncle Delmer and my father's worked for some of the trainers around there, and then started training on their own and developed a reputation. My uncle Delmer moved to Edmond, Oklahoma. My father stayed in Big Cabin, and that's where I came onto the scene. My cousins, Rick and Tom, my father, Ronnie Sr., and my uncle Delmer, all field trialed horseback dogs. Delmer and Rick, horseback Brittany's, and Tom and my father ran pointers and setters. So in about 79, 78, 79, the family went to South Texas. That's when the King Ranch had started to lease the land out. So corporations leased that land, and there was a need for dog handlers. And my family went there in the late 70s and had, contract on 4 camps, I believe, separate hunting camps, wild bird operation. And so that's where, when I graduated high school, that's just where I went, was South Texas, and spent a little over 40 years down there.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. So expand on that a little bit more. When did you come into the operation then? And when did you kind of really start to, work with dogs more, and kind of where did that passion start to develop for you?
Right. So growing up around a dog trainer, rural environment, everybody has to work, right? So at 5 years of age, I was at that time it was a hoe and a shovel and a wheelbarrow, in gravel runs. There were no concrete and water. So I would clean dog kennels and make sure that the dogs had water. I was 5 years old. I thought that I did an excellent job. And then once I had 5-year-old children of my own, I realized that I probably did a 5-year-old job back then. It was defining for me. I flushed birds for my father. I shot birds for my father. And then when I was 14, I got paid to train my first dog. Now, obviously, my father was there and made sure everything go right, but it was all my work, and that was kind of a step up for me, and trained dogs with my father all the way through high school.
Wow.
And then when I was 19, went to the hunting camps in South Texas, and stayed there up until last year.
Wow. So you were in it very young. you were thrown in and training your own dog, and that's cool. And
it's
Susanne,
a lifestyle for all the Smith boys. I mean, that's all anybody knows.
Right.
It's what we do.
Absolutely. Susanne, so how did you two meet, I guess, and where, talk a little bit about, how did you get down this path?
How did I get roped into it? So Ronnie and I met in 2003. I had a short hair at the time, and decided that needed to get her trained. And I was actually living just a few miles down the road from Rick Smith. And I thought, well, known of the Smiths all my life, and I'll just send my dog to Rick Smith since he's handy. And that just makes sense. I was going to be working on a cattle ranch in Australia for a few months. So in that time span, I could get that dog trained, and she could have some benefit from me being gone. I tried to get in with Rick, and he said, no, I can't train your dog right now, but I do have a cousin in Oklahoma who trains dogs. Ooh, I don't know if I really want to do that. But I took a leap of faith, and I sent that outlaw bird dog up to Oklahoma. And that's kind of all she wrote.
That's where this guy came in.
Yeah. I picked up that short hair, and I have to admit, she wasn't quite finished, because she wasn't finished even the day she died years later. We trained on her together for the rest of her life.
Work in progress.
The beginning of my bird dog training. I grew up with dogs. We had cow dogs, lion hounds. We had bird dogs. My mom field trialed when I was growing up. But that was really the beginning of doing it in a serious way. So I've been training full time since 2006, I guess.
Wow. Okay. That's great. And Ronnie, I know you said Delmar. Delmar's still alive and well, right?
He is.
Very much.
Okay. So he's the one who kind of started this whole thing. So is that your, remind me, grandpa?
That is my uncle.
Your uncle. Okay. So Delmar's your uncle.
Father were brothers, right?
Okay. And then your father is Rick, correct?
Ronnie. Right. Right. Rick is my cousin.
Rick is your cousin.
Yeah, my father, I'm Ronnie Jr. and my father was Ronnie Sr. He passed away in 82.
Gotcha. Okay. Two Ronnies, Ronnie Jr., Ronnie Sr. Gotcha.
So Delmar's two sons are Rick and Tom, and they're both professional trainers.
Okay. Gotcha. What, you touched on this briefly in the beginning, going back to Delmar, your grandpa, was he getting into field trials, wild bird hunting? Like what was it for him that led him down this path to start kennel, dogs, breeding, all that?
Yeah. So he had worked for a trainer by the last name of Epperson. And then he started to date his daughter. And eventually they got married. And that I think was the introduction to bird dogs, and they field trialed dogs horseback. And at that time there was a lot of hunting as well. And my uncle explains it like there were dogs that had problems, and they would send them to the two Smith kids, and those boys focused on it and were able to work some things out that maybe the pro trainers didn't have time to fiddle with or the inclination to. But as a result, developed quite a reputation and started receiving dogs in for training. And it really was a life's work that has led us to multi-generationally here we are now. Yeah.
That is so cool. I know you mentioned briefly guiding on the King Ranch. Is that right?
We have guided on the King Ranch.
Is that something? So is that
talk a little bit more about that. Is that property of your family or ranch of your family, or is that an area you guys just guide?
Yeah, that is a very, very large ranch in South Texas. I'm not sure exactly, 850,000 acres, wow, roughly. And it's 4 divisions. There are a lot of people that guide on the King Ranch.
Okay.
So on the King Ranch, you can lease property to hunt. There are clubs that do that. There are corporations that do that. And then there are family members that do that, part of what they call the Heritage Club. Okay. And we have been on both sides of that. We have been in there guiding hunts for people that have leases. We have been in there guiding hunts. The last 6 years was for family members, the Alexanders there and at the Norris Division of the King Ranch.
Wow, very cool.
And like it's big country, a lot of wild game. It's got pigs. It's got javelina, nail guy, which is an Indian antelope, quail, turkey, dove, deer, rattlesnakes.
Got a little bit of everything.
Everything will stick, sting, or bite you.
Yeah.
And, it's tough country.
But it's a neat ranch to experience because of the history. The King Ranch was started in the late 1800s and is still held by the same family. So the tradition and the culture is really, really neat to see. Same thing with the 4 Sixes Ranch that we've guided on. It was started probably a little bit later than the King Ranch. I'm not sure on the dates, but again, held in the family for generations and just rich in tradition and the cowboy culture, Western culture, and the hunting culture. And is very valuable and means a lot to all the family members. So it's neat to be able to experience some of those ranches like that.
Absolutely. That's got to be an incredible experience. Are those, as far as upland birds goes, I mean, obviously we're primarily quail, right? And are those pretty much wild quail? Do they supplement with some birds that they have to release? And
it's all wild birds.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm sure on the King Ranch, you're not allowed to supplement. Whatever's in you have to leave it wild. Whatever's indigenous, you cannot supplement anything. And we were on the Mariposa Ranch there in Foul Furious for about 30 seasons. Same thing. It was all wild. The 4 Sixes Ranch, all wild birds.
Wow. So is that something will you guys travel down? Is it kind of during the winter time, or like when will you go down there and for how long?
Yeah, season in Texas is November through February.
So we used to be have a real migratory pattern where beginning of hunting season in Texas, we would be down there. We would start at the 4 Sixes and spend roughly 6 weeks there, and then move south to either the Mariposa or the King Ranch and finish out the season down there. But since we have this new place in Osage County, Oklahoma, we're trying to stay home more. We've got 9-year-old twins, so we're not guiding anymore. We're trying to stay home more, and we've learned that we can train dogs in the wintertime instead of the summertime. So we're having a shift in our schedule and what we're doing, which is kind of fun. Everything's got a little bit of a new twist to it.
Definitely.
So we're rearranging things.
Yeah. Figuring out schedules. I have 2.5-year-old twins right now as well. So it's fun. It's fun. We got 5 kids, 1 on the way right now in September. So a little crazy. So I get this, managing schedules is tough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's fun though. Tell me a little bit about your kennel that you're running right now. Tell us a little bit about the kind of dogs you're training, your program. Tell us a little bit about that.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we just in the last few years, I guess, we have decided to just specialize in pointing breeds. We used to work some flushers, but we've decided we're just specializing in pointing breeds. So basically any pointing breed we'll work with. You look at our kennel on any given day and there'll be everything from Drothars, Griffs, short hairs, Vizslas, obviously a lot of Brittany's and a lot of pointers, because that's kind of what our family's known for. Most of our personal dogs are pointers or Brittany's. So there's always a high percentage of pointers and Brittany's in our kennels. We will take 2 training classes a year. Our next training class will begin in October and run through the end of December. And then we'll take another 3-month training class next spring. So we'll receive those dogs and keep them for 3 months and take them through the 3 levels of our training format, which are the foundation, intermediate, and the advanced. And most of our dogs are gun dogs. We do a few competition dogs, but I'd say the majority of them are gun dogs.
Okay.
Anything to add to that?
No. You named it.
she covered it all. She covered it all. Yeah. Speaking of trials or competitions, are you guys personally running any of your dogs in instant trials, or have you in the past?
Right. We are not running anything. You know, our schedule for the year is that we would take a 90-day class of dogs, like March, April, May, and then another one June, July, August, and then go to Montana for 30 days in September, and then go to South Texas, November, December, January, February. So yeah, there was no time for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that 90-day class, training class that you're taking dogs in, is that kind of the, at the end of 3 months, is that pretty much a broke dog, a finished dog at the end of that 90 days? Kind of what are you walking through that dog through those 90 days? Just kind of maybe an overview.
They're never finished.
They're always a work in progress.
That's a good point.
So yeah, basically, at the 90 days is as fast as we feel comfortable bringing a dog through the training program. We don't want to push them any harder than that. So we consider those dogs at the end of the 90 days being green broke. They have all the skills. They have all the cues. They know what to do. They just need more experience, more time in the field, and to take those conditioned responses and really build it into deeply ingrained learned behavior. So yeah, that 90 days is the bare minimum to get a dog. Well, if you boil it down to the very basic things we're doing, every dog needs to know 3 things. They need to stand still, go with you, and come to you. So the stand still, we teach them to stand on cue, to whoa. We do that through the use of the whoa post, which is just a mechanical cue to have them stand still. And from there, we can transition to the remote cue of an e-collar. And then from there, we can transition to actually steadying those dogs up. So it's a step-by-step process that each of these dogs go through. The beginning of the go with you skill set is just to learn how to heel on a loose lead, to look to the handler and go where the handler is going. And then that transitions to going with you in the field. And the coming to you, that's every dog needs to know how to recall. So we start with that very basic thing on a rope, teach the behavior, able to transition that to an e-collar, and then eventually take it to the field and work on the retrieve with that discipline. So everything we do is building up to where the dogs are. Probably the last 2 weeks of training is where they're able to tie everything together and really be proficient in the field and in life. Yeah.
Well, that's really good. How many personal dogs do you guys have right now? And what are...
You never asked that. No.
It's a good question.
We don't count.
I get in trouble.
You don't count.
Yeah, he's a dog collector, so no.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, just Brittany's, pointers, both. Yes to all.
Labrador.
So we don't breed much, but we breed a couple of litters a year, and somehow every litter we seem to keep 2 puppies.
There's that French word, right? That is no.
Joint decision, or
no. Sometimes.
Well,
yeah, she tells me we're keeping 2, and I go along.
Yeah. Okay, we're keeping 2. Very smart. Very smart. Well, I got to ask, do you keep 2 to evaluate them, or do you keep 2 for the long haul?
Yes.
Yeah. So everything we're doing here, we're looking 2 and 3 generations down the line, and what traits we want to build on, trying to kind of phase out. And so you can't tell at 8 weeks which is going to be the best stud dog in a litter. I mean, that's not reality. So we'll keep them at least to a year of age and make a decision. Okay, this is the best bet for this set of genetics. We're going to go with this dog. And then it may even take until year 2 before we make that decision. So we try to give them time to develop and really, really showcase who they are before we make that decision.
Can you guys expand on that a little bit more? Kind of the evaluation process of a puppy, and maybe what are some of the things I guess you are looking for? Say you have 2 pups and you're evaluating them. Is it? You just go through some of those nuances of things that you're looking for as you're evaluating dogs.
Well, I'll make it a little bit broader than that. When Ronnie and I are training dogs, what we have realized is there's really 3 things that dictate how well a dog does in training, in the field, and just in life in general. So that is composure, compliance, and confidence. So when we're looking at any dog, that's kind of the baseline where we start. So if we're talking about with a puppy, we want puppies that are confident in any environment, because a bird dog is going to be taken to a lot of different places, exposed to a lot of different things. We recognize that most bird dogs live in the house and have a very stable day-to-day life and routine. But then they may be asked to load up in the truck and go on a 2-day drive to South Dakota to a big hunt, or they may be loaded up to go to Georgia and go to a plantation hunt or something. And they're very, very seldom are they asked to perform in familiar territory. It's always new ground. So we want a dog that is confident in being around other dogs, people, new environments. We just want a very resilient dog. So we look at that with our puppies really in depth. And we really work to build that as well. We're doing with our puppies, we're doing the military super puppy program to build that resilience beginning day 3 of their life. And then as they mature, 5-6 weeks, we're constantly adding new stimuli and trying to build their confidence in any environment. So that's probably the very first thing we look at is their confidence. And then composure too. We all want a dog that's going to go out there in the field and give it 110%, just do the very best job he can possibly do. But the flip side of that is that when he's not in the field, he's probably in the house. So for ease of living with him, we need a dog that is capable of being calm. And also for training purposes, a composed animal is one that's easier to teach. So those probably are the 2 that we really look at a young age. Compliance with a puppy, we are teaching them a lot, but we're not really looking for a puppy that does everything perfect every time we ask. That's just not reality with a puppy. So really, as a puppy, we look at their confidence. Anything to add to that? And of course, style and drive and all that, but that's kind of a given.
Confirmation.
Right. Yeah. All that plays in.
Yeah.
But I think Ronnie and I focus a lot on the mindset, the mental side of things. And that's kind of where that's focused.
Yeah, no, that's huge, guys. I have so many questions on that. With that though, real quick, first thing came to mind, with style, again, that I know it's not a make it or break it for a good bird dog. Is that something though you can, I guess, breed for? Or is that something, if the parent's stylish or the grandparents are stylish, the puppies are going to have a better chance of being stylish? Or is that something you can work with a dog on? Does that make sense?
you're constantly breeding for a body type, a style. If you look at every breeder across the U.S., they're going to have a certain body style that they like. Those are going to be the dogs that they're drawn to. And that's purely personal preference. But as far as basic conformation and everything, that's more static. And you can breed for that style, you can breed for that conformation, but breeding is also a lot like the lottery. You can't say, okay, I'm going to take these two fantastic animals and I'm going to breed them together and every puppy is going to be exactly like that. It doesn't work out that way, but that's the goal.
Right. You hope. Someone told me once it's like an odds game, really. It's just, you can up your chances by, getting some great parents and grandparents. But yeah, like you said, there's no guarantee.
Absolutely.
That's cool. What are more so? I'm just curious. What are some of the Brittany lines or name of dogs that are in the Smith line that maybe people would recognize?
Well, Delmer started with the Brittany's, and I think his first championship was 1955, and that would have been with Towsy. Towsy was the first Brittany that Delmer had come into his kennel, much less take to a championship. It was the first Brittany he had come into his kennel. So he got really lucky from the get-go with that. That was when the Brittany's were really coming into the United States in a pretty big way. So he started Towsy, and then Holiday Britt was a Hall of Fame dog that he handled. Trying to think who else. Britt's Bazooka Brandy, Wakan Jill, a lot of the older kind of foundation lines. And then, of course, Rick guided or field trialed with Perry's Rustic Prince, Pacolet Cheyenne Sam, and those are still dogs that you see in pedigrees today. And all of our dogs that we have here at some point go back and their pedigree touches those original dogs that Delmer had even in the 50s. Wow. And then going through to Rick's dogs that he campaigned with and he worked with. Wow. So it's a really unique line of Brittany's, and we're trying to preserve that. Ronnie and I got, what was it? Maybe about half a dozen years ago, we looked up and like, we're probably not going to breed Brittany's anymore, even though we had two of the best Brittany's that Ronnie and I personally have probably ever had. We started to kind of walk away from the Brittany's, and just here lately we realized what a foolish decision that was. So now we're going back and rebuilding our string based on those two. We're doing some outcrossing, trying to go back to other dogs that go back to that lineage. And really, we're turning out some really fun litters right now. So it's kind of a reestablished endeavor for us. That's pretty fun.
That's fantastic. And how many dogs is it you said you had?
No idea. Good try.
I'm going to get this answer, I promise.
We can give you a number. 15.
North or south.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between.
Yeah.
We'll have a litter in a week or so. So, that's in a state of flux.
Right. Yeah. Can you guys, would love to maybe hear from each of you. I know maybe you've each had some of your own personal dogs. Maybe pick one personal dog each that is maybe a standout dog that you've got to own, that you've trained, and what made them special and what made them stand out in your minds. Again, I know there may be lots of them, but I'd love to hear kind of, again, with your knowledge and your experience, like what is it that you saw in those dogs that made them special?
For me, I think it would be heart and character. When you were posing that question, the first dog that came to my mind was a black and white pointer that Ronnie and I had for years named Dude. And he was tougher than a boot and would go out there in the hot hunting field in South Texas and just give it his all. Every time he gave it his all. And he was a house dog that was a complete goober to live with. I mean, just a goober. And I think those two traits are what really appeal to me as far as our personal dogs. I like to have ones that have a personality and heart.
Yeah. I don't know, thinking about that as Susanne was talking, I I've had the been fortunate in that there's probably half a dozen dogs that we've either owned or trained that were dogs that most of the dogs we see for 90 days and then they go away and they might come back for a tune-up the next year or year after year. But to own dogs for a long period of time, we've not had a lot of that. But there are probably half a dozen dogs that had for a number of seasons in those good bird years that, you were consistent in your boundaries and what you ask, and you could almost will them into hitting an objective. You know what I mean? It's like you'd be sitting there on the front of that truck running those dogs and giving them their head, and they were, going to the country, and just a pleasure to sit there and watch. Not many people get to see that. Now that we quit guiding, we probably won't see that again either.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. Definitely want to get into some training stuff. We have to talk about some training things with you guys, but also want to touch on kind of like developing a bird dog and just have some things around that. Really kind of, again, it's kind of a broader question, but when you're thinking about developing a young dog and really bringing out their natural abilities, like what are some of the key things in that? And again, just for more context, like developing a wild bird dog. Again, there's dogs that maybe see a lot of pen raised birds. And again, we'll get into that in a little bit, but when you think about developing a wild bird dog and bringing out their natural ability, like what are some of the keys to that?
So if I may, so you said something about a young dog initially, and then we went to a wild bird dog. So exactly, I'll go to the latter. In all of the years that I'll speak for myself personally, in all of the years that I guided, the one definitive thing that I took from all of that, when I was in my 20s, I knew everything that was going on, and if you didn't believe me, ask me, and I would tell you. And as the decades rolled on, I realized that I didn't know anything. You either found the birds or you didn't, basically. But the one definitive thing that I did take from that experience was the dog's mindset. You can have a dog that's very highly trained and does everything right and still not have a bird finder. And you can take a dog, a young pup that has no training, but if he is more focused and intent on finding game than your trained bird dog, he will find more game than your trained bird dog. So it is all about the mind. It's all about the focus and intent of finding birds, period. Training has nothing to do with it. That just gives you enforceable manners in the field, where it should, right? It shows the dog, it trains the dog to do what it is that you want him to do. But it's the mind that makes obviously success develops proficiency, but still it's the dogs. You want to try to have an apex predator when you go to the field. You want that mindset, and that dog will find game. Sometimes they'll find a lot of different game, but that's the mindset you want.
Well, and to take that even a little bit further, that mindset, it doesn't just happen. You have to present that dog with opportunities throughout their life. And there's a couple of windows of opportunity for those dogs to really develop that higher predator mindset. As puppies, they need to get on birds. They need to be comfortable in the field, and they need to have reasonable success on birds. And then as they go through their first year, they need consistent exposure on birds. And what Ronnie and I have found too is those dogs that see a lot of birds their first year after their training, that first season. If they are fortunate enough to get into consistent numbers of birds, particularly wild birds, they are more likely to stay in that super proficient predatory mindset for the rest of their life. But the dogs that miss those windows of opportunity, it's harder to get them to that level just because they didn't get the experience at the right time.
You know, if you put it in a, think about us, you know, those experiences that you've had where if you've been fortunate enough to see a lot of birds, and Susanna and I have, it instills hope. So on those down years, you keep going because you see that birdie area, or if you're hunting in the same environment, you know, there's a covey there last year or the year before, and you keep going. And that's what we see with the dogs that have a lot of wild bird contact their first year, and definitely has to happen by the second year. It instills that hope. Those dogs that don't get that have a tendency to have a lot of quit to them. You know, whenever it gets hot, or the grass birds are bad, or things get tough, or there's too long of time between one covey to the next, they lose focus. So the bird contact is the first season is very, very important.
Yeah. So it sounds like with a young pup, the big thing I'm kind of hearing from you two right now is bird exposure is really key. How young will you start introducing birds to again, take a young dog. How soon will you introduce a young dog to birds, and how will you do that?
So like with the puppies that we raise here, we start taking them out in the field after they're 6 weeks of age. That's when they can navigate the grass and the rocks, and they can be comfortable and successful. And we'll go out there. And initially we're working on the go with you. We want them to come and start following us, looking to us for direction. And we'll get into some quail just inadvertently. We'll get into some birds, but typically that's kind of a wasted opportunity for those little bitty guys. Their senses aren't aware enough to really pick up on that. So we'll take some pigeons and we'll restrain them and let those puppies on those trips. We'll let them find and investigate those birds. And we restrain the pigeons so that we don't scare the puppies. We want to set the puppies up for success and take baby steps. So we will restrain the pigeons so the puppies can investigate, get their mouths on the bird, get comfortable, learn the scent, and then we can start hiding those birds where the puppy starts picking up on, I smelled a little bit of pigeon scent, and follow that into the grass or whatever. And then we'll build up to where by the time our puppies are going home, they are finding quail on their own on those walks. They're able to progress to where they catch quail scent and they can follow it. Even if that quail is running, they'll work it a little bit and then chase it off a little bit. So we start at a very young age, and then we just keep presenting them with opportunities that first year.
You know, you can take those young puppies. We have Johnny houses or callback houses, and you can turn those quail loose and bring those little puppies in there. And if they can see that those quail run on the ground, you know, for a little puppy, the quail that don't fly real well, and I'm talking 8, 9, 10 weeks old. And then that's breed specific too. You know, you can take a 10-month-old pointer and it's maybe a different dog than 10-month-old Brittany. Right. So, but you can take those puppies and let them see that bird running. So that kicks in the prey chase. Right. And if the bird doesn't fly far, then that dog will chase it to where it landed. And he knows it's there because he saw it. So there's the mindset. Those little puppies will hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt and hunt because they know it's there, and they'll eventually find it. And then they learn to work scent. And those are things you can't teach. We're in the same scenario. If you have a bird that the puppy sees it run and he chases after it and it gets up and flies 100 yards, that's just over. That deal's over. That puppy's not going to run 100. He can't even see it fly that far, you know? So again, it's all about mindset.
Yeah.
And we're big believers about trying to stay out of the equation, let nature take its course, let those puppies build that instinct on their own. We try not to say much to them. We try to just kind of be invisible at that point. We don't want to interfere with the learning process. We want what's natural to take place.
Yeah, don't think you're going to be talking to that dog, telling that dog how good this is, right? That's
not going to work.
Right?
You're just to walk with them, right. like Susanna said. That the coming with you at that point, you're just walking. They can kind of follow you, but you're not. Yeah,
that's right.
I'm sure you've seen, people with a 10-week-old puppy trying to whoa it, or, like slow down.
Yeah.
So here's a question to the flip side of that. So you talk about mindset a lot, a dog in the right mindset. So say you get a dog, at your training sent to you, and say it didn't see a lot of birds the first year of its life. How do you work with that dog then to build its drive and expose it then to birds? It's a little bit on the older side, hasn't had a lot of exposure.
Well, unfortunately, we see that a lot just because of how society lives these days. Most bird dogs live in an urban environment, and, the realities of life get in the way. When we all get a puppy, we have high expectations and think that we're going to be able to do all these special things with the dogs. But in reality, there's only so much time in the day, and it's hard to get out there. It's hard to carve some time away for that puppy to, maybe drive. A lot of our clients have to drive even 2 hours to get to where they can get that puppy on birds. So the reality of it is that a lot of puppies don't see game birds their first year of life. A lot of dogs don't see a bird until they come to us for training. But fortunately, because of the instincts and because of their genetics, we're able to ignite that fire, and they come along just fine. We'll typically spend at least the first 2 weeks of training really just immersing all of the dogs in birds. We want to make sure that we have that prey drive built to as much of a pinnacle as the genetics will allow. So a lot of bird exposure early on before we ever even think about manipulating their behavior around birds. We want them confidently going in, working scent, learning how to work scent. We don't want to teach dogs to catch a little faint whiff of scent and stop cautiously. We want them to learn where that bird is based on the scent. So that may mean they go in and they punch birds and rip them out and chase them for the first couple of weeks, and that's okay. So we really try to build that prey drive early on, and then slowly and gently start introducing rules and new behavior.
And I'll go further, something that's chasing rabbit trail, which I'm so prone to do.
Let's go.
Right. But, talking about the mindset of dog, everything that Susanna just described that we do prior to putting any rules or expecting any kind of behavior in and around game. We do the same thing when we would go to Montana with 25 dogs that we had trained. We only took dogs that we trained because we knew the foundation that they had, and we could build off of that. And
there's no guesswork in how to handle them in the field. So
when we would go to Montana and run on wild birds, typically the first, and it depends on the amount of contact they had. So I'll just use the number 2 weeks, which on some dogs may be 3 days, and on some dogs could be 2 weeks. But we would let those dogs have bird contact, and we didn't have much input. Really, what we were trying to develop was the desire, right? The unbridled passion to go find game. And once those first dogs are finding game consistently, our foundation's in place, our training's in place, we can steady them up on one bird. And that's what we would do. We would pull that behavior back in and get those dogs steadied up so that when we sent that dog home, by gollies, they were bird finders in their manners were in place.
And the reason they needed that time or really benefited from that time is because it was a new type of bird, a new scent, a new environment. So we didn't want to just start out the first run on sharp-tailed grouse to be in the dog's world somewhere they weren't real sure what was going on, and they were having to abide by a lot of rules, had a lot on their mind, a lot of stress. We kind of went back to that puppy mindset to go out there and learn that new scent, learn how to work that new scent, and then we'll take care of the manners later on and really have dogs that are more confident on game by doing that.
You know, when you transition to a new scent, you go to like sharp tails. Dogs don't know that that's a game bird. That's just another scent to them. If we wanted, we could have dogs pointing meadowlarks. We could have dogs pointing anything you want. It is all a scent to them, and that's it. So when you would take those first year dogs to Hungarian partridge or sharp-tailed grouse or pheasant, it was just a scent. A bird got up. Very seldom will they point it. They would smell it. They would work at a bird would get up, and they would either drop their nose on the ground and move off or chase it, right? And then again, whenever you put the rules to it, then they're like, oh, okay, so we're hunting this scent too now.
So take that last part you said a step further. So when does it click for the dog, or when have you seen it click for them that they go, oh, that's a sharp tail, this is what we're hunting now, if they've never experienced it?
Right. So for us, we will train all of our gun dogs or hunting dogs to where they're steady through the flush and wing, right? Steady through wing. So a dog points, the birds fly off. And if you don't shoot or release that dog, he stands there. So for our dogs, when we got in, we'd get them into a sharp tail. And when that bird would get up and fly, we decided we would just stop them with a training collar.
Stop the chase.
So then all rules apply, right? So then we have steadied that dog up on sharp-tailed grouse.
So that allows them to work that scent initially as they see fit. And then when that bird gets up, we're stopping the chase. And that's what identifies to the dog, oh, I'm supposed to be steady on this. And to go address your question a little bit, how long it takes, it depends a lot on the experience of the dog at the time. So like our guide string, most of those dogs for their entire life, all they ever saw were wild quail. We never guided hunts on pheasant or most of our dogs didn't get the opportunity to go to Montana because that's a client opportunity, not ours. We'd usually take one or two of our dogs each year. But most of our dogs had only experienced wild quail. We did a video in Kansas working with Garmin, and we brought our guide string straight from South Texas, 80, 90 degree temperatures, to Kansas, and it was
freezing.
20 degrees for a high and 20 mile an hour winds. And we were on, what did we have there? We had chucker and pheasant. And they had quail too. But so we were filming a TV show, and I remember one of our top bird dogs works in. She was just curious. She works in a little bit and had no intensity, no style. And a pheasant got up and she's like, whoa, is that a buzzard? Completely rocked back on her heels. Not what she was expecting. But she started to chase a little bit. I think you were handling her and you just stopped her. And within a few bird contacts, because of her extensive experience, within a few bird contacts, she was hunting those pheasants. She knew she had purpose out there, and that's the scent that she was looking for. So the amount of time it takes to transition different types of birds just depends on their experience, really.
In their training. You've got to be able to differentiate. You know, if your dog does not have the training or a good color foundation, and your dog gets into a different species and you were to make a correction with a collar and they turn and they come back to you, well, then that's a deterrent. That's not going to teach that dog to point that game. That won't work.
Yeah. Wow. That's brilliant. This could be a 3-day podcast. My goodness. So yes, so really like those, again, kind of applying those, again, when the training's in place, they kind of know, okay, I'm standing through the flush on a sharp tail. It's kind of a cue for them, right? A cue for them to, okay, the rules apply. This Correct. Is a game bird we're going to hunt. Okay. Wow. Okay. I want to ask you guys about, again, I guess pen raised birds versus wild birds. Is there, like, just talk about the pros, cons, and kind of what those birds play into the development of a bird dog.
Well, obviously, as we're developing our bird dogs, we're working dogs on solely pen raised birds. You know, we need dependable, good flying quail is what we use. So for the early stages, well, I'll back it up even. At first, we start our training format with pigeons because pigeons are even more dependable than a pen raised bird. So we want those pigeons to get out of there quickly and fly away so we can steady our dogs up and not have them land, say, 20 feet beyond where they got up. We want them out of the field at that point. So once the dogs are steady on pigeons, then we transition to pen raised quail. And it's critical that you have good pen raised quail. The proficiency of the dogs in training is directly correlated to how strong and how wild your pen raised birds are. Those birds that get up, they flush, and then they just drop back down and land. It is very difficult to get good, clean bird work on that type of a bird. So good, strong pen raised birds are critical. And that's a dicey situation. It's hard to keep good, strong flying birds all the time. But if you have good birds, then you can guarantee those dogs bird contact, which again lends itself to that mindset. They expect to find birds every time they get turned loose. So that focus is there. The downside, I think, to wild birds is you can't always depend on them. You can't. And that's what we ran into in Montana, too, when we were up there in the tough years. You can't guarantee that you're going to get any bird contact when you need to with those young dogs. And even if you do, it may be that there's not a good solid point. You know, the dog may just catch a little whiff and that wild bird is up and out of there. And you really don't get to work on the manners that you're really trying to work on. You have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think once you have a dog that's trained and has a good understanding of what's expected of him in the field, I think that you can, that a wild bird is more forgiving than a pen bird. I think that you can manipulate that dog more so on a wild bird than you can a pen bird. For whatever reason, dog has the ability to differentiate between a pen bird or a wild bird. And I'm talking quail now. I mean, they can tell the difference between a dead bird and a live bird. I mean, they're an amazing animal. To be able to have, and like Sue said, I think you've got to have pen raised birds initially to get the mindset. Yeah. If you just turn a dog loose to go wild bird hunt, you're not going to find many birds. You're just not. So get them focused on your pen birds. There are some dogs that can stay focused year round, and they're kind of hard to live with, in the house. I mean, they're always looking out the window but that dog's always in shape mentally and physically. And then those dogs that sometimes can make a really great house dog, they fall out of focus and fall out of physical condition. So that dog, it would certainly pay dividends to go to your local preserve and work some birds before you go on that driving halfway across the country for wild birds to have success.
Yeah. Is there ever, a fear of if a dog gets on too many pen raised birds, like does it become too easy for them at any point where maybe they're picking up on the scent where you planted the bird, or that aspect versus wild birds? Like, are wild birds going to be more of a challenge for that dog? Because are these dogs going to figure out the game quicker with planted birds?
Yeah, it's like Susanne said, for us professional trainers, the quality of pen raised bird that we have directly determines the quality of dog that we send home. If we have birds that if a dog crowds, they'll get up and fly out of sight. And that's very similar to a wild bird. Those dogs will have great intensity, be very crisp and proficient in their training. If we have those birds that sit and allow a dog to creep in or flutter out there 30 feet, then you're always guarding against that dog creeping in or catching that bird. And that affects the dog. I mean, every correction that you make, you take a little intensity out of it. So there's a huge difference between wild birds and pen birds. And there's also equally a huge difference between great pen birds and not so great. I think fall pen raised birds are easier to have great birds. Spring birds, most of us have carryover birds. And then if you're too late in season, they start laying eggs and molting, or if you turn them loose from your Johnny houses, they pair off and don't come back. I mean, it gets very difficult.
So I think the ideal model is always the wild birds. I think everything you do with a pen raised bird, you're trying to create a scenario that is as similar to a wild game experience as possible. So, the good flying birds, that's critical. Even when you're playing, you mentioned following your tracks. Absolutely. Dogs pick up on the little things like that. They'll follow the tracks on a four-wheeler. So you have to, as you're training your dog, you have to keep that in mind, that you're trying to basically replicate a wild bird encounter for your dog. I know we have a lot of people that, it's hard for everybody. When you plant a bird, it's hard to remember where you planted it. I mean, everybody struggles with it. So I know it's very common for people to tie engineer's tape or something to a bush nearby or the grass right there. And we get, humans, we get lazy and we may drive the four-wheeler just right there where we plant the birds. Even those little things like that, dogs pick up on almost immediately. So you have to be aware of those little nuances and try to create that ultimate experience for the dog when you're planting.
That's great. Okay. I'd love to get into, we're kind of talking about, a little bit of training already, but would love to dive into a little bit more training stuff as well with you guys. Have a couple questions would love to ask you. But before we dive in any further, can you guys just give us, a lot of people out there may have heard of the Smith method or the Smith training. Can you guys just give an overview of when someone hears that, like what is the Smith method?
Just want to take a quick moment and thank each of our sponsors, Be Pro Kennels, Final Rise, and Trinity Bretons. Now, Trinity Bretons has been a sponsor of this podcast for quite a while now. There's some great people to work with and putting out some great dogs that are just killing it in the field trial world. Final Rise, putting out the premium Upland hunting gear made here in the USA. And I also did a review of the new Sidekick vest over on my YouTube channel, the Upland Rookie Podcast. So check that out. Full review of the Final Rise Sidekick. And then Be Pro Kennels, again, making products here in the USA. Ben Proctor over there putting out some great custom-made quality dog boxes. So check them out.
Why don't you tackle that?
Sure. So my definition of the Smith method, or what I think of it is that it is a system. It is a complete system. And what I mean by that is everything that we do with the dog is for a reason. It's a progression. Basically, we're building 2 points of contact on a dog, one on the neck for movement commands, for heeling, quartering, and coming to you, and one on the flank for having a dog stand still. From that we can build whoa, honoring, and steadying a dog up. So it's a very, very structured step system of training. That's why we call, or we designate each month. The first month is foundation. The second month is intermediate level. That's the steadying up process. And the third month is advanced. And that's where we're transitioning those points of contact to one spot on the neck, and trying to simulate a hunting scenario. So there's 90 days and 30 seconds.
Look at that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is really unique and beneficial to the dogs in this format is that we start with the most controlled environment possible, and then we just take baby steps, building that association as we go through the process. And everything is designed to set the individual dogs up for success. We have a very basic curriculum, but every workout is different. So every workout is designed for that dog, and not just for that dog, but for that dog in that moment. So everything we're doing is constantly adjusting for how the dog is reacting, how the dog is behaving that day. So it's very individualized, even though it's a pretty set curriculum, if you will. There's a lot of nuances that go into it for the individual. So it works with any dog. We feel the pressure. We have dogs that are going home at the end of our course, and Susanne and I self-induce a lot of pressure. It's just who we are. I mean, we want it to be perfect. We want to show these clients why they've been paying us to work their dog. And sometimes it's perfect and sometimes it's not. But I have completely lost my train of thought.
It was going to be really good.
Oh man, it was a good one.
I was on the edge of my seat.
It'll come back to me and then it won't mean anything, right?
This may be where you're going, I don't know, but you're talking about imperfection. It doesn't matter if you're a pro or you're an amateur, or if this is the first dog you've ever trained. There's going to be great training days and there's going to be some not so great training days. So there's going to be peaks and valleys, even for the dogs. Even if all the training is presented right, the animals are going to have different emotions each day. They're not completely separated. The workouts aren't completely separated from everything else that's gone on in that dog's life the last 24 hours. They're still impacted by things going on around them. And you may take a dog out for a workout one day and they're not in a good place mentally. But I think that's the beauty of this training format, is it allows you to work with those peaks and those valleys, those good days and those not so good days, and progressively get better and better and better. And just like Ronnie said, dogs aren't perfect, humans aren't perfect, but we all have that goal of pure perfection for both of us, and we're all striving towards that.
That's very profound.
I remember.
All right, we're coming back. We're going back.
Where I was going with that is that, at the end, we want the dogs to be perfect, and again, they're not always perfect, but during training, we pay more attention to the dog's mindset than we do the function in the field. If we're having a hard time getting a dog to be honest on his game, to get him steadied up, we're really watching his mind and figuring out why are we having this problem? Do we not have his attention? Is his prey drive? Does he have more heart than sense? Is his prey drive off the charts? I mean, why won't he steady up? What is it that we're not conveying? So the mind is the most important thing. And we feel that if you pay attention to the mind of the dog, then the rest will come to play.
Okay, so along those lines, I guess talk about how are you reading a dog? How are you reading their body language to know if they're not having a great, they're distracted, their mind's not in the right spot. Talk a little bit about that as again, body language. yeah, I guess just expand on like how you're reading those dogs to know what kind of day they're having.
We need a string of dogs to show you because that's such a visual thing. But, for us, as soon as we put our hands on a dog, first thing in the morning, that's our initial kind of our baseline read for where that dog is. So if we go to that dog in the kennel or the crate or wherever, and say they're bouncing around, they're jumping all over us, they're not listening to any of the cues that we give them. So that tells us that we need to take a step back and we need to implement a little more of that composure. We need to build a little bit more of a calm mindset with them. If we go to a kennel and the dog is reticent to come to us, then we know from the get-go, okay, this dog is feeling timid or reticent, fearful, whatever. So we need to build that dog up throughout the workout. And that's something that we've had to deal with a lot in the last few years with COVID. We've had dogs come in, and for the first 3 weeks, we couldn't get our hands on them with that dog being receptive. We walk into the kennel and they're barking defensively because we're a stranger. They've never had to deal with strangers. And so you have to jump that hurdle. So those little things, they set the tone for your whole workout. We're always watching the head, because wherever an animal is looking is where their mind is and where their body will be. So if they look down and maybe they're smelling a scent, well, they're going to follow that scent off. So those little things like that kind of give you tools to know how to cue the dog to get them back where you want them mentally. If a dog is his head's moving a lot, he's like a kid playing a video game looking for something to watch all the time, then that's another indicator. You need to cue him to settle that mind down, slow that mind down so that he can process what's going on around him instead of just reacting. And we get a lot of reactive dogs in for training, and that's what we do with all that. And typically you see a reactive dog, their tail is going to be going 1,000,000 miles an hour. Their head's going 1,000,000 miles an hour. They're tense. If you put your hand on their shoulders, they may jump because they weren't even aware you were there. So they're kind of off in their own little world, looking for something to do and not paying attention to what's going on at hand. And they react more than think. So we try to work to slow those minds down where they can be more aware of their surroundings and what's going on and react, make better decisions. We want them to make good decisions. What are some other behaviors that you can think of off the top of your head that we deal with a lot?
Yeah, I think I guess what I was thinking about as you were talking, even though we have this relationship with these dogs, as soon as the owner shows up, the dog is the exact same dog that he was 90 days ago. It is amazing. So that's why we have to have owners come in and spend time with us. We have owners say, "Will he forget me?" And my answer is no. That's the problem, right?
That's where the problem starts.
Yeah, that's right. If your dog would forget you, we would train it and fly it to you, and life is good.
All the bad habits we teach them.
Right. Immediately they come back. So we have to spend time with that owner to make the transition from us back to them.
Is that probably the hardest part for you guys sometimes, is really training the owners versus the dogs?
I don't know about training the owners, but every transition that we go through is unexpected because we don't know what behavior to expect from the dog. We know what they've done with us for the past 3 months, but we don't know what they've done with the owner prior to that. So I don't know how many times we'll be going through the process of the showings, and all of a sudden this completely foreign behavior pops up with this dog. We're like, where in the world did that come from? And typically at some point the owner's like, oh yeah, he used to do that when he was a puppy, or yeah, we do this at home. Like, oh, okay, then it makes sense. But that, I think, is the challenging thing for us with the showing, because you don't know what unexpected behavior is going to pop up. And every dog that we sent home from this last class, we had about 30 dogs in this last class, and I checked them off the list as we went through. Every dog that we sent home showed some unexpected behavior that was routine with their owner, but not routine with us. So it's a challenge, and it threw us off because it just wasn't normal for what we see with them. So that's probably the biggest challenge with the syndromes, I think.
Yeah.
Well, what are some of the biggest, maybe biggest mistakes owners make that you see, the things that maybe the dog comes in and there's just a habit or something that you see new handlers, new owners of dogs, like, I guess, what's the most common mistake you see people make?
I think the most common mistake, and I know you're going to have a different twist on this, but I think the most common mistake that we see is, and it's human nature, but people tend to judge what an animal does by human standards and not by canine standards. So a lot of the animal behavior is misinterpreted, and it makes a lot of it snowballs into making that animal hard to live with. So I think that's the biggest mistake, is not understanding the animal.
Can you give me an example of what you've seen with that?
Very often I think people misinterpret dominance as love. If a dog comes up and pushes on you, as a human, we tend to think, oh, he's rubbing on me, he wants my attention, and he's such a sweetie. But in the dog's world, he's coming in and pushing on you for a reason. He's trying to elicit some behavior and control the situation. And I think that's the most common.
That makes sense.
Even jumping up on you.
Well, yeah.
We had a couples weekend this last weekend, and one of the attendees was talking about her dog doing that, and she had a realization that was not what she thought it was, because he did it to me. He did it to Susanne, and I looked at her and said, he doesn't love me. He doesn't know me. So this is, so again, trying to, if you could communicate with your dog without saying a word, then maybe you can learn to see things on a dog's perspective.
Well, and I tell you, referring to that events deal that we had, the lady that Ronnie was talking about, it was so inspiring to watch. As soon as she was given the tools to read her dog's behavior and understand, she was enlightened, and she started having fun with her dog, and we all had fun watching the transformation. The dog's like, oh, okay, I will listen to you.
Wow.
Complete change in the relationship, and it was healthier, and everybody could see how much healthier it was, and it was exciting.
It was awesome. Yeah.
It was the highlight of it.
that does sound like a highlight. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. All right, a couple training questions here, and you guys can expand as much as you want. But can you guys talk about the importance of kind of the getting the groundwork right? And kind of what I'm thinking about is, let's talk about the breaking process. Would love you to talk about the breaking process and the whoa post a little bit more in depth, but can you talk about the groundwork and kind of laying that foundation for the dog as kind of a starting point?
I'll jump in here, because in the way I see it, the groundwork is everything. The fundamentals are critical for a dog's success in any environment. So, and I'll go back to the 3 behaviors that we teach a dog. And really, if you think about it, almost everything that we do with a dog can be tied into the 3 behaviors that we preach. And that's go with you, stand still, come to you. So if you can have your dog do those 3 things in any environment, then they're going to be doing it in the bird field. And that's one thing that we have really started to focus on. If there's a problem, you always step back to the fundamentals. You never address the problem at the point that it showed up. You always go back in training a step and work with the fundamentals. It's like the story of the check cording with Delmer. I'll let you elaborate on that.
Yeah. When I was in my early 20s and I knew everything, there was an older dog that we had. He was an old dog. For us, an 8-year-old dog, when you're guiding commercially, it's an old dog. And this dog was that. He was 8 or 9, and had hunted at that time, had hunted more quail than I had been around, just an old soul. And I had commented on that hunt that morning, how We hunt Senderas in South Texas or roads, and he was not quartering both sides of the road. He was hunting one side, and I was not able to get him back across, and it was atypical of him. Now, my uncle told me, he said, well, let's put a check cord on him and quarter him. And that was the dumbest thing I ever heard. You know, that was a 9-year-old dog, and we're going to put a check cord on him. And
you hadn't had a check cord on him in 8 years. Yeah, I do it now.
Yeah, you know, but I didn't have a say-so in the matter. I had to do it.
You were doing the check cord, yeah.
Yeah, I was puffed up and had a bad attitude, and I did it. And, you know, after, honestly, I don't remember how long it was, but I'm going to say 50 yards. It was nothing. He said, okay, now drop the rope. And I did. And that dog went out there and stitched the seam. I mean, back and forth, quartering that road, both sides. And it taught me, I can admit it now, but it taught me at a very young age the importance of a foundation. And that's really, really our focus, because with a good foundation, you can reference it at any time in that dog's life and clear something up, straighten up some behavior on the fly, on the hunt, and no one will ever know you did anything. You know, talking about mistakes that people make, I'll go to the field, and I know Sue's probably knew where I was going to go with this, but I think some of the things that I see are shooting to see if shooting a gun to see if a dog's gun shy. Well, he is now, you know. There's a better way to do that. So don't just take a dog out there and shoot up in the air to see how it reacts. If you did that to me, it would scare me. I would recover because I would look around and see what's going on, but a dog might not. 2, don't teach whoa on game. Don't teach whoa around game. That's how you get pressure-induced behavior. You teach whoa away from game so that you can enforce whoa around game. Don't teach here on retrieving. You know, that retrieving, a natural retriever is a very possessive mindset. The only reason that dog goes out there is because he wants to possess whatever it is he went after. Okay. And now you start shouting verbiage at him. He's got something that you want that he wants, right? And now you're hollering here, here, here. And if he doesn't, the inflection goes up. And if he's been around you any at all, his perception of pressure goes up. And he'll spit it out and go on. He may come halfway, spit it out. He may chew on it. There's all kinds of things that can happen. So don't try to teach commands around what it is that command should be used for. Teach it away so that you can enforce it when you're there.
Yeah, work on those fundamentals and then move forward and apply them in those other areas, and it'll be more successful.
So you're spending quite a bit of time on the groundwork, right? Before you will reintroduce birds, right?
Yeah. So our first month of training, it's called the foundation month. Basically, it's all done with a rope. So that's when we're really introducing those concepts and teaching dogs those very basic behaviors and getting a lot of repetition in that super controlled environment where they're on a rope and we can. It may take a little bit of time, but we can work with them and get success every time. Every workout, they're going to have success. So we're starting to build that behavior a little bit. So yeah, we do a lot of rope work. And that's why Ronnie and I, when we get up in the morning, it's, oh, my back.
The groundwork is key.
Right. And when you're training dogs, when you're teaching a concept, it should have a better understanding. That dog should have a better understanding each workout. If not, you're not getting proper association. And then once your dog has the concept, then you work to proficiency or consistency.
So once you see consistency, then you'll move on to the next step, right?
Right. So you're teaching a concept and understanding. And once they have an understanding, you train for the consistency. Mm-hmm. And that's right. Then you build off of that. That's part of your foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Can you give us an overview of the whoa post, and when you have an older dog now that you are gonna break to say wing shot and fall or whatever it is? Can you give an overview of what that would look like when you're training a dog?
So again, I'll go back to everything that we do. We start in the most controlled environment possible so that we can guarantee that dog's success. So the whoa post. Essentially what it is, we've got a stake in the ground with a soft, big, fat rope snapped to it. And we will loop that rope around the dog's flank and then snap the end of that rope into their collar. And then we've got a check cord that we're working on the other side. So basically we've got the dog where we can set them up for success to be still. And all we're doing really is teaching the dog to stand still when feeling a physical cue. So in most animal training, it's all based on cue and release. Dogs learn on the release. So we cue that dog with that physical cue on the flank and they stand still. The beauty of the whoa post, and I'm sure Ronnie will go into it in even more detail, but the beauty of the whoa post is that we can clean up a lot of other physical behaviors and mental issues there on the whoa post, because typically the whoa post is the first time a lot of these dogs have to stand alone by themselves and work through a cognitive puzzle. They have to figure out what's being asked of them. So it's a real challenge for them initially because we're not standing beside them. We're giving them nothing. The rope is giving them nothing. They've felt a cue and they have to work through, okay, what does this mean? And there's a lot of kind of default behavior that they've learned during their course of their lives up to that point that have worked. Say some dogs, maybe they're passive aggressive. Maybe they lay over on their back whenever they get told they can't be on the couch or not to chase the cat. That becomes a default behavior that they use. Some dogs are taught to sit, and they have that as a default behavior where, particularly in moments of excitement, they sit. So maybe they sit before they have food. Maybe they sit before they go outside. They sit before they get attention. They sit before they go and talk to the kids because that's the only way a lot of people can get the animal to be calm. Well, all those are moments of excitement. And what we see with those dogs with default, a really strong default to sit, is we'll see it in the field. That behavior will come up in the field. So the whoa post gives us the opportunity to reshape some of that. I'll go into that.
No. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Real quick before you jump in, Ronnie, and this could be for either of you. So just to back up maybe one step. So once a dog's on a whoa post, is that their very first interaction to the flank? That's question number one. And two, is there any work prior to the whoa post that you do with a wonder lead or standing still? Or is the whoa post the first thing teaching them to stand still?
So ideally, yes, they've had a lot of work leading up to that. Like for our dogs, we've gone through a lot of, we call it the challenge course, but it's just an agility course where we're teaching them to listen to cues. So we get a lot of the cognitive reasoning skills developed then. So they're looking for cues. They're thinking about cues. They're composed. They can stand still. But that takes time. That's really what should be happening during that first year of that dog's development. So yes, a lot of the dogs that are started in their formal training, they don't have much of that yet. So they're kind of jumping in both feet first and figuring it out. But because it's such a controlled environment, they're always successful.
Right. And Susanne really covered it very well, but I think what the whoa post does, again, you're working in a super controlled environment, and the being in a controlled environment, you're able to make happen what you want to happen exactly when you want it to happen, right? So you get good association. But even more than that, you're teaching a dog to just stand still in a super controlled environment. They can't sit where you pull them up. They can't lay down where you pull them up. They can't go away where you stop them with the check cord. There's no lateral movement. So they've got to just stand still, just stand still. And there is a cognitive process that goes on that you take that introverted or that passive aggressive dog and these things in their portfolio that have worked before you have to just stand still. They really learn how to problem solve and associate and get on their feet. It is, in my opinion, it is the greatest thing. And we've changed over the years. We're not woe posting as long as we did 10 years ago. I think our approach is softer than it used to be. But I don't foresee us ever not doing the woe post because it pays such dividends to that dog.
And to go back to your question earlier, I didn't really flesh that out very well. You were asking about if they had had any prep work done before they see the woe post. And that's one of the things that's built into the woe post. We have basically an introductory stage of the woe post where we just get them comfortable with the whole scenario. We want them comfortable with a rope suddenly being around their flank. They've never experienced it before. We're not going to ask them to go feel that and perform at a high level immediately. We want them to get comfortable with it. Again, it's part of the mindset. They have to be confident and composed in order to be compliant. Yeah. They have to accept it in order to be able to learn. So we do have this introductory stage built into the post. And after they accept it, it's just like kind of like stacking out a horse. Before you put a saddle on a horse and get on a horse, you get them used to the equipment. You get them used to accepting that scenario.
Is there ever theory? Oh, so sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is there ever a neck cue before the woe post to stand still, or is the woe post and the flank the first cue to stand still?
So the woe post and the flank is the first cue to stand still, and there's a reason for that. One, if you cue a dog on the neck, you don't have control of their full body, so you might ask them to stop, and their hind end moves 4 or 5 feet to the steps one way or the other. You don't. So you're teaching. Well, woe kind of sort of slow down. It's not woe means stop. And two, one of the reasons that we keep using the woe post is because of clarity. We're developing a new point of contact. Puppies from the get-go, they're pulled around by a collar on the neck. Sometimes it means something. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it means it comes to you. Sometimes it just means somebody accidentally stepped on the lead, So that's a muddier concept for those dogs. So we start with a clean point of contact that doesn't mean anything to them. And from that point through the rest of their life, a cue on the flank simply means stand still. And we keep it very black and white. So on the woe post, we cue the dog with that rope around the flank, and they stand still, and we let them go through that mental process, and we wait for acknowledgement. We wait for that dog basically to say, okay, I think I kind of get this, which is usually a yawn, a lick, a swallow. And then we go to them and we take them off the woe post, and still having them remain standing still. We don't allow them to take a step. So black and white, we cue them to stand still. We take the woe post rope off. If they have an infraction, we cue them with that check cord to remain standing. And then we have a release where we touch them on the head so that they know exactly the point when they're asked to stand perfectly still and the point where they can forge ahead and go run. So the more black and white it is, the more control of an environment you start with, and the more black and white the cue is, the cleaner it is for the dog. And that's what we see with the woe post, is it just sets them up for success every step of the way. There's a cue, release, and they wait for the release to move forward.
Yeah.
And so it's very concise for them.
And will birds be introduced on the woe post? So once they've kind of made the progression, they are standing still. When will you introduce a bird to them?
So the whoa post is just about developing a cue to stand still. And like I said, I touched on earlier, there's a lot of other byproducts that are great benefits. There's a lot of other things that you can clean up on the whoa post, which is part of the beauty of it. But we just want the dogs to learn to stand still when cued. And then we'll transition to super low levels on the e-collar, where a continuous cue e-collar, just like brakes on a car, means to stand still. And we'll go through a couple of weeks of just practicing that, just making sure they're comfortable with it. What we look for when we're stopping a dog is to be able to tell that you told that dog to stop. It's a Morse code between you and the dog. You've developed this language, and somebody watching from the outside, it just looks like that dog made the decision to stand still or to stop what it was doing. So we practice and practice and practice until the dog doesn't even have to think about it. When he feels that cue, it's just automatic. He just stops. And then we're able to increase the level of distraction by going to the bird field and introducing the concept of stopping the chase at that point. And again, we take baby steps there. We don't just go out, okay, we can stop our dog. Now we're going to stop him as soon as he catches scent. We don't make that leap. We take baby steps.
Well, and to bring birds into the whoa post equation, it's like teaching whoa on game, teach whoa away from game so that you can enforce it around game.
Get it perfect first and then increase the instruction.
Gotcha. Okay. Last training question. You guys are so good. My mind is like spinning right now. Last training question as we start to wrap this thing up, and then just have a couple of listener questions that I would love to run by you. So creeping. When a dog, you have a dog that's sent to you, and they catch a little bit of scent, they stop, they creep, they stop, they creep. How would you address creeping with a dog?
It's a pretty broad question.
Yeah. So
I know.
Here stopping. So here in this might not be a definitive answer, but our concept on setting a dog up is the traditional way to steady a dog up is you have a means of making him stop, right? You bring him into scent. When he detects scent, when he makes game, you enforce him standing still. Our philosophy is different, and it's been different for 20 some years, and for very valid reasons. Our concept is we're taking the chase, right? So there's every predator chases game. I'm sorry, every predator stalks game, because when they chased it, they couldn't catch it. So birds of prey, they soar and hunt, or they're sitting on a perch and hunting. Lions, wolves, you name it. Every predator stalks game before the pursuit. And that's the same with the bird dog. That we call it a point, but it's a stalk, right? I've lost my train of thought again.
Stopping the chase.
Stopping the chase. Thank you so much.
There we go. Good job, Susanne.
Those are those rabbit trails. As I'm talking, there are things. I mean, it's like chew,
yeah,
chew.
I'm sure.
So the chase has become important to us in that what we do is we have a means of stopping that dog, and that's the collar on the flank, and we bring that dog into game, and this is where the pigeons really come into play, because we can flush a pigeon in a launcher and he's gone. I mean, he flies off the premise, and it helps us to steady that dog up. So we take the chase, even the wing drill that you use with a little puppy, you put a wing on a fishing line and you flip it out there, and he goes over and investigates, and you flip it off to the right, and he chases and he chases and he chases and he chases, and finally he points it. It has nothing to do with the wing. It could be a white piece of paper. It's all visual. It's all prey chase, right? But because he can't catch it, he then points it or stalks it. So we do the same thing. So on that, when we're going through that steadying up process on those dogs that creep in, we let them creep in and we try to keep it as real as possible, just like a wild bird. When that dog creeps into a certain distance, we flush that bird. And when that dog chases, we then stop him. And what we see is incrementally, bird after bird after bird, that dog starts to steady up. And a large part of that creep goes away. Now, if it doesn't, then chase first and creep second. And what that means is as we're steadying this dog up, if he's creeping in, the bird gets up and he stops and stands there and watches it fly off. Then we start stopping the creep.
So by stopping the chase initially, we really develop an honest mindset with that dog where they tend to be very, very steady. So typically we don't have much issue with creep. And that's addressing that in a very, I mean, that's one scenario a dog might be creeping in. There's other reasons a dog might be creeping, but that's addressing one scenario of it.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna elaborate just a bit if you don't mind. And
yeah, please.
The reason we changed our whole training format is because, again, over 20 years ago, and as the listeners listen to this will resonate with some of you. We started to receive dog that as we steadied up, they were broke, they were steady, but their tails were wagging, right? And I was raised that if you have a dog that's flagging on point, it's pressure-induced behavior. And we knew that was not the case. We knew that wasn't. And we were seeing it at that time, 20 some years ago, we were seeing it in about 10% of the dogs.
Wow. As
time has progressed, that number is larger. We're seeing it in quite a few dogs now. And all it is that you have this domesticated predator, right? That's living in an urban environment, which is a short grass, sterile, visual environment. So this predator that's living in your home or your backyard, he is hunting whatever it is that he can. It's that squirrel running the power feed in the alley. It's the bird at the feeder or the water, but it's all visual, right? So when you would steady those dogs up, again, physically, we had their body standing still pointing, but the mind just wanted to see it. Wow. And that's why the tails are flagging. So that's why we have gone from taking the chase out of their mind rather than physically. If that dog wants to come in and flush a bird, we let him flush it. And if it takes 500 birds to stop the chase, to take the chase out of his mind, to get the intensity on point, then that's what it does. And we have, I bet we have a 90% success rate at cleaning those dogs up. Now, here's the downside. When they go back home, they go back to the very environment that created it. So it can come back.
So you're saying allowing them to chase is, you're kind of saying it's getting that out of their mind, which then is going to stop the tail, hopefully, right?
That's right. That's right. The tail is hardwired to a dog's mind. You watch his head, you watch his tail, you'll know all you need to know about that dog.
So you'll let them chase, get that out of their system and figure out, okay, I'm never going to catch that bird when I chase it. My job is.
That's right.
But we're not allowing them to chase. So when we talk about stopping the chase, initially, when the bird gets up and the dog chases it, we'll let them follow that bird for a little while and then just slowly stop them with the e-collar.
On the flank.
It's not immediate. We allow them a little bit of process and slowly through the training format, that link that we allow them to chase is backed up to where it's almost non-existent. And it gets to a point where the bird gets up and the dog stands on his own intensely because that chase has been shorter every time he's gone through that until finally, naturally, he stands on his own. He makes the decision to stand on his own.
Wow. And then back to the creeping aspect you were talking about a second ago, is that dog kind of learning? So they say they point, but then they take a step or two or a step, and then that bird flushes. The dog is learning that, oh, by that step or by that creep, I cause that bird to flush, right? And then the game's over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And two, so if your dog is a dog that goes on the flush, and that creep is liable to never right itself. He comes in, he crowds the game, it gets up, he lays his ears back and chases it. So for that dog to steady them up to a higher degree, will pay benefit. Now, here's a curve, right? So there are some scenarios that it is advantageous for a dog to creep, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's the truth.
You heard it here first, folks.
So there has to be cover for a bird to run through to leave scent for a dog to detect, right? Susanne is from West Texas, way out there, and it's tough country. And there's not a lot of cover on some years more than others, but year in, year out, basically, it's pretty tough country. And what we saw out there, and even in Arizona, New Mexico, there are areas that on those desert birds, if the dog can't smell, if you have a dog that comes in and they run off and leaving, and then when you relocate, he can't pick them up again because there wasn't enough cover to leave scent. You lose that covey. Yeah. So there are some situations where that dog might need to kind of stay with the covey a little bit just to maintain contact, location.
That's a great point. Okay, guys, we're going to start wrapping this thing up. I just have a couple listener questions. A couple of these you've already answered, so we'll kind of breeze through a couple of them. But Alec writes in, biggest difference between your pointers and your Brits?
One has a tail and the other doesn't.
Really?
No, I think so. For us guiding hunts in South Texas, like we did for so long, a pointer, that's pointer country. I mean, it just is. You've got a short-tailed or short-haired dog that is a dog that can mitigate the stresses of heat. You have a dog that in some situations, and a lot of our dogs, pointers were that way, maybe had a little more desire than sense, right? So they were warriors. I mean, they were soldiers. That I guess that's the best way to describe it. And that's what it took to hunt in that environment on a commercial operation, where if you want to talk about the Brittany Sue.
So yeah, we've always used our pointers and our Brittany's in the same environment. And to me, the difference is that the pointers don't have to be trimmed or shaved. The Brittany's do. We would take Brittany's from our place to say North Texas, and at our place, they'd be performing, hanging with the pointers, doing exactly what the pointers would do. But as we migrated south, we'd go to North Texas at the 4-6s ranch. And you'd realize that, that Brittany's kind of missing a step. He's not as good as he was in Oklahoma. And then you go further south, go to deep South Texas. You're like, wow, we're not going to be able to get much done with this dog. And you shave them, and boy, they're right back to what they were before. So I think a little bit of maintenance is probably the biggest difference.
Yeah.
Wow, that's good to know. I always wondered if shaving them actually had any kind of effect on them or not, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
Definitely.
That's cool. I just shaved my my male a couple weeks ago, and he looks like a little bald rat, but someone called me. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, just one or two more here. Ken writes in, when do you know, or how will you know, if your dog is a non-performer? Maybe they don't have what it takes: nose, drive, lack of point. And I think he's just trying to get at okay, you have your amazing dogs and you have your good dogs. Does that make sense?
So Ronnie and I always go back to mindset. If a dog is being outperformed by the rest of our stream, we go back to what is it about his mental state that's causing this? First you want to make sure, physically make sure there's nothing physical, but if it's mental, what does he need to get his mind back right where he can be as proficient as the other dogs? And sometimes, it's something simple like, Delmer and the pattern, going back to the check cord. It could be something simple about just going back to a pen raised bird and immersing them in consistent birds where they're focused again and they get productive. And that's what makes it challenging to decide when it's time to just say, okay, maybe he's better suited to something else, because maybe he's suited better to something else, or maybe you just haven't been able to figure out his recipe for success. And that's, I think that's probably why Ronnie and I hang on to dogs as long as we do, and we'll even have dogs that go through peaks and valleys during the season. The first season they're top hand. Second season, they're a little more unproductive. Okay, why? So maybe give them a third season, see, okay, well, just an off season, which we've seen before. We've seen dogs just go through off seasons where things just weren't aligned for them. So that's a tough call. Do you have any insight?
Yeah, just, things that you can see from a dog that hamper their performance. And, one is those, we try to build a dog that has quick refill or quick or good bounce back from stressful situations. And a stressful situation to a dog as people can be different, right? But you get those dogs that are not able to mitigate the stresses of life well. So they, you throw them in a truck or a trailer or a box in the back of the truck, and you drive for 2 days, right? They're off, stressed, right? They're stressed. You jump them out in an unfamiliar area, they're stressed. Maybe they're with your buddy's dogs that they've not been around. They're stressed.
Maybe your buddy's handling.
Maybe your buddy's a screamer and holler. They're stressed. So
we're all stressed then.
Right. That's right. So they're off their feed. They're not eating. In about they've lost focus. Everything is on their mind. All input is they're acutely aware of and not even thinking about birds. 2 days into it, they're out of groceries. Now your dog, he's not eating. You don't have a dog.
Yeah.
Another might be, going back to what I was talking about, those dogs that come in, and we want a dog that can walk in the door and turn it off, but one that walks out of the door and gives you 110%. There are those dogs that can walk in and turn it off, but when you walk back out the door, it's still off. That dog, like Susanne said, if you don't keep him in birds, if you just throw him in the truck, then you drive to this big excursion and he's physically out of shape. So you got half a day dog, right? And he's certainly not focused. So now you've got a dog kind of putzing around, not thinking. You're not going to find any birds with that dog. Keeping that dog thin, keeping that dog focused will fix that. The first dog I talked about, taking him into stressful situations so that he can learn to mitigate it. And don't bend down and pet on him. Say, it's okay. This is a dog. You're not talking to a human. Be that confident leader. Sure, your dog's feeling what he is, but if he's looking to you for direction, if you're that leader, then if you go through those scenarios, those situations with confidence and no indecision, you help him get stronger. And in time, he can learn to have bounce back and mitigate things.
So I think the baseline answer to the question is not just look at the performance, but to look at the root of the problem. Why is that dog not being productive? See if you can figure out the why of it, and then decide whether or not that's something you can manage and fix long-term. A lot of it is a lifetime commitment with those dogs. You figure out the root of the problem and you manage it. You help them with that throughout their life so they can be productive.
And I think don't think that just because you have a bird dog, that you have a bird finder. That's a mistake. We'll see people run dogs and like, there's no birds out there. Well, that's not necessarily true. So we see dogs run by birds every day. And these are dogs that are in birds every day.
Is that just their, that's a whole nother rabbit hole, probably.
It's life.
Is that
podcast?
Yeah, I know. Is that just they're moving too fast? Is that their nose? Is that
Yes.
all the above?
Yeah.
Oh, you guys are so fun. Okay, well, I do mean that. Okay, I think you've answered kind of the rest of my listener questions there, so we will wrap that up. Okay, every podcast, I always like to ask everyone, for the rookie Uplander out there, someone maybe who is heading into their first season, maybe they just picked up their first bird dog. What is some advice that you would give them heading into their first season?
Study your animal. Learn your animal. Don't assume your animal is a person because they live in the house with you. Learn about your animal, and they'll tell you what they need. They'll tell you how to keep them successful. And then you can go create some great memories.
Yeah. And I think whatever trip it is that you take, do a little research before you get there, because that way you're not burning days learning, you can hit the ground running. Have a good medical kit. We always traveled with metronidazole or flagyl, because there many times you'll be out hunting and a dog will drink out of a water hole, and before you get back, he's got diarrhea. And that's a terrible thing. It leads to dehydration. So a staple kit, have all of those things that you need. Do your homework.
That's really good. Good advice. All right. Last section is our rapid fire round. And so I'm just going to ask you a couple questions and just give me your off the cuff answer, and we'll wrap this thing up. So Susanna, for you, what came first? The gun, the dog, the bird, or hunting?
The dog. It's always about the dog for me.
Yes. Good answer. Ronnie, same question for you.
Dog.
Okay. I like that. Both of you, what gun are you carrying into the field when you're hunting, and why?
I'm carrying a 28 gauge siren, and it's made for a woman. It fits, and I love that.
I've got a Spanish double that I can't pronounce the names.
Those are the good ones when you can't pronounce them.
Yeah.
That's great. Okay. This one might be tough for you guys. I'm not sure. Favorite dog breed besides the ones you've owned? This might be really hard for you.
I'm kind of partial to a draught as long as they're not too sharp. We've got children and small children, and if they're pretty sharp, we just don't want to fiddle with them. But
we love them.
Yeah, I tell you what I like about them is that they don't wear their feelings on their shoulders. They're all business. And if there's an apocalypse, that's the dog I'm going to want.
That's a good way to put it. Have you been getting many draughts in your training program?
Yeah,
we get everything.
Wow.
I mean, we get dogs that I can't even pronounce the name of. Yeah.
Okay. So all right, Bo, you might be the first guest to have set a draught. So congratulations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It's always fun to hear answers. Okay. Favorite bird to hunt and why?
Ooh. Just one?
Just one.
You do one, I'll do the other.
Okay.
Oh, tag team. Look at this.
Yeah. And why?
I just have such a respect for that bird. They're amazing.
I'm sorry. What bird did you say it was? You cut out.
Sharp-tailed grouse.
Sharp-tail. Okay.
Yeah. They're an amazing bird. They're great to work dogs on. I don't care if I ever shoot another one. I just want to work with them. They're a neat bird.
Early season Sharpies.
Yeah, it's early season.
Awesome. I'd have to go with Bob White Quail. Spent my life guiding hunts on bobs and developing dogs. And I don't know, there's something near and dear to my heart with the bob.
That's great. Okay, last one. Beverage of choice after a hunt.
Water.
Rehydrate.
Water.
There's been a trend in the last several guests. They've been saying water, and that's a valid answer.
Yes.
It's a valid answer. Oh, gotta stay hydrated. Well, Susanne and Ronnie, this has been amazing. Thank you guys so much for spending time and just sharing your wisdom and knowledge and some insights with myself and the listeners. I've really, really appreciated this.
Well, thank you for having us on. We've enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you. You are two fun guests, and it's been a blast. How can people, I guess, follow along with you, keep up if they have questions? What's the best way to connect with you guys?
Yeah. So our website is ronniesmithkennels.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We've got a pretty active page there. So meet up with us here.
Okay. I was going to ask, with your training program, is there a pretty long wait list for that usually? Is that something someone could reach out to you and ask about?
Well, right now we're booking for next spring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Fantastic. Sounds good, guys. Well, thank you so much. You guys have a great rest of your week, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Will.
Well, that's a wrap of episode 54 with Ronnie and Susanne Smith. Guys, thank you. That's all I can say is thank you so much for carving out an hour and a half of your day to talk with me about dog training, the Smith family history, the training methods, and answer some questions from listeners. So appreciate you guys. I cannot wait to talk with you again. Hey guys, don't forget, if you are enjoying the podcast, the next kind of big goal is getting to 200 reviews on Apple Podcasts. So if you could take a minute, go over to Apple Podcasts, leave a rating and review. It would greatly help the show get out there to more hunters, more bird dog lovers just like you guys. Don't forget, we're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube as well. So go over to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. Got a couple videos up over there, including the Tailgate Talk with Jeremy, episode 3, and a vest review of the new Sidekick vest from Final Rise. So, and again, on Facebook, I'm not sure who uses Facebook anymore, but we're over there. So anyways, hey, I hope you guys are having a great week. Again, season's coming soon. I hope everyone's doing well. Get your dogs worked, and it'll be here before we know it. So anyways, take care. Have a great rest of your week. Oh, go put some miles on those boots and follow your favorite bird dog. Take care.